Hello and welcome to episode 186 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is the amazing writer, incredible actor, and all-round just awesome person. I'm joined by the outstanding Steve Oram. Yes, if you've listened to Mark and Me before or any episode has skipped to the end, you will know just how much I love the absolute masterpiece by Ben Wheatley and Steve and Alice, the incredible Sightseers. It's one of the best British films you'll ever see. It's very fucked up, it's very dark, but honestly, it's an incredible movie from start to finish. And if you haven't seen it, I hope this podcast does enough to make you go and watch it because it's unbelievable. But in true typical Mark and Me fashion, before we get into that interview, I want to touch base and talk about my last episode. I was joined by James from the unbelievable band Rollo Tomasi. We got to sit down and talk all about their brand new album, Where Myth Becomes Memory, and it's still heavily on rotation at the moment on my Spotify. It's absolutely unbelievable, and a huge thank you to anyone that listened to the episode and has taken the time to check out that band, because they really are mind-blowing. But let's get back to today's episode. As I said, I'm joined by the amazing Steve Oram, and we get to talk so much about British comedy, films, stand-up, and so much more. So I think the best thing to do right now is to get to that. So here's me and Steve talking all things comedy. So Steve, thanks for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Hello, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for thinking of me.
Always. What I want to do today is for listeners that may have been fans of your previous work, I want to take it before that. I want to take it right back to the very start. So growing up, can you remember those first films you watched or maybe acting performances that made you fall in love with the big screen?
Well, I suppose my first influences were on the small screen because that was where most stuff was available. So for me, the things that stood out were things like I was always into the comedies, people like The Young Ones and
amazing.
Slapstick, Idiot. They're big children, really, weren't they? Just hitting each other and smashing through brick walls and things, and that really appealed to me as an 8-year-old boy. So, but also, I suppose I always was drawn to those sort of larger-than-life comic actors. I really liked Ronnie Barker when I was a kid, doing the two Ronnies, and actually Tom Baker doing Doctor Who was a big influence. Just these sort of very odd people doing quite strange things, and you kind of you like them, but you don't know why, and they're a bit scary. And that kind of thing always that template sort of was set in stone quite early, I think. Later on, I obviously got into people like Peter Sellers, and Steve Coogan came later as well. And people like that are really sort of inventive character actors, really. So that was sort of always my thing.
I mean, they're amazing foundations, and I remember, I think it was in the week, maybe a Thursday night, my dad would let me stay up and watch Bottom on BBC Two, and people like Rick Mail, I was just like such a larger-than-life character, but I was absolutely infatuated with his performances. I was like, as much as he's scaring the hell out of me, I love him and I'm just drawn to him. So that whole Young Ones, Bottom, Alan Partridge, all those early ones that were on BBC Two and stuff, they just the highlights, weren't they? The golden days.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, it's there's nothing like it now, really. I can't think of an equivalent. I think people were allowed to be quite silly in those days and on TV, which you sadly don't see very much, really.
I think everyone's too worried about offending or upsetting anyone now. You could just do what you wanted then.
Possibly, yeah, for better or worse.
Yeah. So you're watching these incredible shows, and you've mentioned some of the absolutely amazing foundations and stuff. But like you said, a bit later on, you would start to take note of other actors and stuff. But what was it that made you want to kind of go down that route of comedy or stand-up or being a larger-than-life character? You know, getting out there and having your voice heard.
Well, it's very hard to pin it down as to just being one thing. I think it all comes from. I probably would consider myself a writer above everything else, which I think is where everything comes from. So it's sort of telling stories, really, and inventing, dramatic landscapes. Because I always used to love reading, and it all sort of feeds into the same thing. I was being immersed in imaginary worlds and trying to it's sort of trying to capture that magic you feel as a kid and excitement you feel as a kid. And I think that kind of still is true today. It's that would your childhood self, like what you're doing? That's always a test for me now, is would your 8-year-old self like what you're doing? Would they think it was boring or, a bit...
I love that.
bit up itself, or something. So then you can't, you always got to pin it back to simple things. And I think, yeah, so they sort of, that was kind of the start of it. And I think if you want, when you get on stage and you do stand up and so forth later, it all comes back to that. But I think you don't really know. You're just drawn to it, and with that excitement, then you just see where you go. So that's what I did, and used to do things like school plays and play music and things like that. Mess around with my friends and my cousins, and just arse around all day when we had time off. Things like that, and that in itself, and somehow managed to make a job out of it.
Could you imagine yourself having to go down that other alternative world where you'd have to go to the office job 9 till 5 or do this and do that? Or you always just like, look, I want to have fun. I want to be able to do something that doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, that was always the dream, but it didn't stop me having to do those sort of jobs, earlier on in life. But it is capturing a sense of fun. But it's also, as you find out, working really hard at it.
Yeah.
Just saying, let's just go and piss around for an hour. It actually ruins the fun when you start doing it as a career, because you have to. I've just been writing today. I've just been agonizing over. Basically, got about 4 sentences that are good.
The whole day's wasted, but I got 4 lines. Yeah.
Got 4 lines, and they're pretty good. I'll probably scrap them tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? But it's horrible. It's really hard. And you just go out for a walk and that and go, oh God, I hate this. But there is a sense of fun once you look at it back, I think, eventually.
Do you put yourself under a lot of pressure? Because obviously when you've not got those time restraints in place, I suppose sitting there writing, I remember it's 20 years ago now that you were doing the circuits in Edinburgh, the Fringe Festival and stuff. Yeah. Were you kind of, at that point, knowing how much you wanted to try and achieve? I mean, it's early days in your career, but were you kind of putting pressure on yourself? How were you getting to a point where you knew you had to get something over the line and finish that you were happy to take out there?
In those days, it was kind of blind confidence to a degree. Because I started off doing stand-up. I was a character actor on the stand-up circuit in the 90s.
Yeah.
Which was, you don't really get that now on the stand-up scene. So you'd have your normal, your observational stand-ups, and then you might have a magician, and you might have a specialty act, and you might have someone doing a character, wearing a wig, and so I did that for ages, and that was, I kind of just, no one told me how to do it or how you should do it, or that I couldn't do it. But I was just allowed, you could sign up for open spots and just do it. And so I used to go and watch people doing it and think, I could probably do it or something. And I tried to think of something original to do. And that was kind of how I did it, really. And that kind of, that blind confidence which you have when you're in your early 20s or whatever is really helpful, because it just powered me through up until, things happened quite quickly for a period of time, for a few years, until they started leveling off, and then ups and downs, for the next 20, basically. But that was, so going to Edinburgh was like that, we just, no one really told us how to write an Edinburgh show. We didn't have a director or anything. I was working with my friend Tom Meaton, and we were just 2 mates kind of getting stuff together that we liked.
Yeah.
Together in a, working hard on it. But I mean, what do? You just have a go. That's all that we did. And
it was working though, wasn't it? You were there, you were doing these shows, you must have been getting a good reception and starting to think, actually, people are liking the stuff we're doing.
They were, but it was very hard. I mean, we were conscious that we were well down the pecking order of, we were up there, the Mighty Boosh were up there, and they had people queuing around the block and doing 2 shows a day. We were, 20 people and, a lot of mates and things like that. It's quite, it's quite sparse. But
we'll get you in for free. Please just come down, fill the room up. Yeah.
But well received. People from the industry came and watched it and liked what we were doing and stuff. So that led to other work. But it's quite tough, Edinburgh. Quite cold audiences generally. But nice. It's fun, but a bit stilted in the performances sometimes. But I preferred it in London. Doing the clubs, which was a bit more, rough and ready, and people being drunk and up for it kind of thing. But
were there some shows that were like off-putting where you thought, I don't know if this is for me because of the crowds were so hard to win over, or just because it was just ruthless out there, drunk people in a bar just shouting abuse, or just some of these rough and ready places? Were there any moments you thought, I can't be fucked with this, like this is just not worth it?
Well, when I started off, I used to do all those gigs because you didn't know any better, and took me a while anyway to work out that having the right audience is absolutely essential for your act. So I was going to all these, like a terrible. I had this promoter who used to give me work, and he would just put on gigs in all sorts of unsuitable places. Just the side room of a pub in Redditch or somewhere, and it's not even set up. There's no PA. They've got the music on. You can't really do your thing. So I used to sort of do these terrible places, and that was kind of all right for a bit. You kind of learn that you don't want to do that, rather have a better audience. It takes a while to work that out, I think.
And what was it like when you were telling your friends and family and stuff that you wanted to go out there and make a name for yourself in comedy, where we talked about people like, I suppose, the Mighty Boosh was Noel Fielding and people, and you've mentioned today Steve Coogan, these really big, huge household successful names. It's not easy, is it, to get to that height and that level? So when you're telling people that that's what you want to go out there and achieve, you want to, be seen and make a living, basically be able to pay a mortgage and do all that from comedy, were people kind of supportive, or like, when are you going to get a real job, that sort of thing?
Yeah, everyone was pretty supportive, I think. My parents were, that was a very nice. It's been so easy for them not to have been, because it was financially difficult and at times, but it I don't know. It's kind of had a death wish to do it, I suppose. So I didn't have any choice, and people saw that was happening. But I could see a progression with it. So it was not like it wasn't like I was in the early days, nothing was happening, because it did actually progress quite quickly.
Yeah.
Previous to doing comedy, I'd been a musician, and so which I'd done for years and not got anywhere. And I just gave that up in the end because it was too hard. And then it sort of did an open spot by chance, just on a comedy night, just for a laugh, really. And it all took. I got signed on my first ever gig.
Jesus, that's incredible.
Yeah, mainly because I invited all my mates down, and they were drunk, like there's carloads of people coming down from Worcestershire, and so it was a brilliant atmosphere. And another mate of ours did a spot as well. And then the second, I got signed up, second gig. The next gig I died on my ass and continued to die for a whole other year, But
the first show had like 6 sides of A4 of just guest list.
Yeah, basically. I thought they all paid.
Yeah.
But
signed on your first gig, though, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah. I thought I was a genius, and then I realised that I wasn't quite soon after that. But it's funny that, isn't it?
But then look at it, 10 years later, your support for Steve Coogan. We've mentioned a few times today, it's started to turn into Steve Coogan cast, but you and Alice Lower's support, that's pretty special. That's a place to make a name for yourself and really start to turn some heads, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a big thing to do, wasn't it? Just the scale of the gigs, really, more than anything, because it's O2 and Wembley Arena and all that kind of. It's 20,000 people at one gig. You go, oh God, what's all this? It was really weird, but the industry, it was sort of being part of the industry at last, really, after a lot of time doing, smaller things. So it's nice. Yeah.
Is that kind of a weird mentality in the way that if you're a band, you're that support slot for a big band, and you got to kind of go on and win the audience over and play a few songs and hope people aren't just like, fuck off, let's get ready for the big band, Are you
Yeah.
going on stage thinking, fuck, everyone's here for Steve Coogan, but hopefully someone might buy a t-shirt or come and see me at the end, or that sort of mentality where you kind of try to warm the crowd up?
Yeah. Well, we were doing bits in between so he
Yeah,
was changing. He did I think 4 or 5 characters in the first half, and so we filled in the bits between and did
yeah.
a few little things, which always tended to go down well, and we got nice feedback. But it was, they were all there to see Steve, weren't they? It's his show, so
Pretty cool though to say on your CV that you've got to be part of that and be on such a
yeah,
great tour, and the success behind that is unreal.
yeah, and to watch him work as well, it's a masterclass really. Watching him, I mean, he's just a incredibly talented person, but he's worked hard at it.
Yeah, and he's
Despite
still going now. We've got new stuff coming
yeah,
out from him, and I think he's doing a Jimmy Savile thing next, which looks
yeah,
mental.
can't wait to see that. So that's yeah,
Christ.
what a take on, God.
And I'm blown away when I was doing some research, but I love the movie Sightseers. I genuinely do. It's one of my favourite British films, but I can't believe it's 10 years old this year. It's just one of those things where you're
Yeah,
like, fuck, is that really one of those things? But I'd
it's
be shocked by my audience and listeners today if we didn't talk about this film. And the fact that you wrote it and were involved with Ben Wheatley, who's one of the best filmmakers in the country, it's a film that I recommend to people, and if they like it, I know we're going to get on. But if they say to me afterwards, like, what the fuck was that? That was too dark, that was twisted, I know they're probably going to get offended by my sense of humour moving forward.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. I get that. I understand that. But
Yeah, it's always a good one. You meet someone, you're like, do you watch League of Gentlemen? Yeah. Oh, I didn't like that. Okay, we're not going to get on. Do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm? Oh, God, I'm not quite sure about that. Okay, brilliant. Sightseers, oh, God. So,
yeah.
you know, sitting there writing this, did you ever think it would become this kind of cult classic and this huge film that everyone I know absolutely adores this film? I've never met anyone that doesn't like it.
Oh, that's very, very nice to hear. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what we wanted to do. But I've done lots of projects before that where I thought, oh, this is going to be a cult classic, and it never was. And this one had the right idea and the right people involved to make it. It's just an alchemy of time and people being at the right stage of their career. It's a big collaboration, really. I'm not just talking about me and Alice and Ben, but I'm talking about the Film 4 and the people who made it happen and pushed it. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you can make the best film ever, and if no one sees it, it doesn't really go anywhere. Whereas this one had, they pushed it. It had 125 cinemas, I think it was, when it was released. It's pretty mind blowing for a small British film. So it was good. It clicked into place for quite a rare thing in life, and it also it was at the right time for people to accept it. The material was right, I think, for people it felt fresh.
Yeah.
Sort of there wasn't that much kind of stuff like that at all. I don't think, certainly not in British films. It was, yeah. So it was a lovely moment. One of the best moments ever, really, for me.
And working with Ben, I mean, he just got it right, didn't he? The feel of the film, the humour, the way it was filmed, the directing, it just feels right, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he had a real sense of, kind of Britishness, and it not being twee.
Yeah.
That's sort of how a different director could have made that a bit, it's all people with caravans and, British, the curtain twitchy British kind of thing. Oh, look at those people and what they do in that body. It was more, so he kind of went primal with it, which I think is absolutely brilliant, and felt focused on the the goriness of it, and the sort of visceral horror of it, really.
That's the
Whereas
word, isn't it? Like the horror. I mean, trying to describe it to someone's really difficult until they've just sat and watched the film. But it's dark, and there aren't any other films really like it. And when you watch it back now, does it feel like the film you set out to make, if that makes sense? Is there anything that was, because it was so dark, was there things that you couldn't get over the line, or was it the film that you put on paper that you were so glad to see transcribed to screen?
I haven't actually watched it for several years, but when I have watched it back, I've thought that it's just hard. I can't put it into words. It's like something that has its own life.
Yeah.
Because when we made it, I don't know if it was the thing that we had in our heads. Certain aspects of it are, but it morphed into something quite interesting, which was, yeah, I think. And I mean, for me, I don't think it's dark at all. But then I'm really surprised when people say, "Oh, it's really dark," and go, "Oh, no, it's just our sort of sick sense of humour." It's having a laugh at. Alice and I both saw it as a comedy, and I think still do, really. But you play it to audiences. We've had several audiences in Europe who just sit there, stony faced, and really enjoy it, but kind of they just go, what is this? And whereas British audiences have tended to just piss themselves laughing. I don't know. It's a sense of humour thing, isn't it?
And has it been one of those things where you've kind of wanted to ever try and do something else, not in that world, because obviously it ends perfectly, but is there another kind of film for that kind of British feel with Ben again, or something you'd like to do in the near future, revisit something around those kind of, that feel, that kind of, I can't describe it, but that film, that feature, that film for British homemade film again?
I'd love to. I mean, I wonder if a film like that would get made now.
Yeah.
And which is a very sad thing. I mean, I think probably more stuff happens like that on TV now. But I think Britishness in film is very underrepresented, full stop, and in telly. That celebration of our strange quirks. And I think I'd love to do. Well, I'm working on something at the moment which I can't really talk about, but which is early stages, but has some of the similar themes, and it's set in the West Midlands.
Oh wow!
Which you've got to do.
And is that at the writing stages that you can't tell me anything about it?
Yeah, I've had a commission for something, so I'm writing that at the moment, but I'll update you as and
amazing
when.
And then obviously since then you've had a crazy career with lots of TV work, lots of film work. You got to work with Edgar Wright, The World's End with Simon Pegg and stuff. That must have been a great experience, because that whole Cornetto trilogy, Spaced, Shaun the Dead, all that feel of all that great TV and film, again, we're looking at British masterpieces that are going to stand the test of time. To be involved in that must be just amazing to look back on.
Yeah, I think iconic stuff, isn't it? And I think that whole the whole 2000s British, there's a lot of really good British comedy talent.
Yeah,
that were actually making brilliant stuff, and I think that does stand up. Watching Black Books the other day, that's really good, and and lots of other Bill Bailey, Sean Locke and people like that all working, and love 15 Stories High as well. That's a TV thing, but there's just a sort of explosion of brilliant talent during that period. So yeah, it's nice to be a small part of it. Motorcycle Policeman, I was in that. Yeah.
It's a great film to look back on, and that whole trilogy works, and to see that Edgar Wright's gone on to bigger and better things is brilliant.
Yeah, he's done all right, hasn't he, Edgar? Yeah.
Not too bad for himself. And with yourself, you said you're writing at the moment as we're sitting here right now. You can't tell me much about it, but I suppose, you had your directorial debut 6-7 years ago now with however you pronounce it. is that giving you a taste of doing a lot more directing moving forward? Are you just still happy with just the pen in your hand to write? Do you want to be in front of the screen? Do you want to do everything?
I wouldn't. I'd only want to direct stuff that was written by me. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Not interested in particularly being a director.
No.
But yeah, always see what happens. I love acting and I love writing, and they sort of seem to exist quite well together, because you have fair amount of time off when you're acting. You can work on scripts, which is good. Directing's very hard because it's just so immersive. I think you've got to pick your projects unless you really love directing. It's really tough because it's just so much to think of in your head. I'm not sure I have. Yeah. Anyway, I loved doing art. That was probably my proudest work in many ways, because it was such a sort of DIY project, and we've got all my mates involved, and it was that was like playing. That was, as we were talking about just a bit ago, about getting all your mates and playing down the park, pretending to be apes, and galloping around South London and stuff like that. So it was yeah, I'd love to do more of that. I love the DIY thing, because you can just get out there and do it, and you have a product that after you can get, you don't have to spend much money, and you can get, if you're like me and you have lots of pals who are good actors and funny people, you can just get something together fairly easily. So I'd love to do more of that, because it's the human lifespan's short, and I've spent a lot of time writing stuff that never gets on screen, and I think going into my 50s, I want to just get more stuff out there, either film stuff or written stuff in books or whatever, because I think you just got to, really. It's too hard. It's such a hard industry to 90% of the stuff you work on is just never sees the light of day, or is seen for a bit and then goes, so.
It leads nicely to my next question. I ask this to everybody. It doesn't matter if they've been, globally successful or they're just starting out, but what advice do you give to people that are listening today that want to be like yourself, a writer, or get into the acting game, when you've literally just quoted saying it's a really hard industry to kind of break through in? But the problem is the resilience, for every 20 projects you sit and write, one of them might make it over the line. You keep getting no's, or you keep getting that must be fucking hard to keep bouncing back.
It is, yeah, it is. That's a huge part of it, and also if you're an actor, the rejection is constant, isn't it?
Yeah.
From all the parts you don't get. So I think resilience is a big thing. If you sort of look at yourself, do you want that life? Do you really want that life? And there's no security in it, really. And I was talking to, not to name drop, but I was talking to Timothy Spall at a film festival, and he told me, he said, even now, I think it's all going to end. That was my last job. I'll never work again. That's what he said to me.
Bloody hell.
Tim Spall, yeah, and he meant it as well, and I feel that. I feel that too. Maybe I haven't got, where's my next job? So it is that. But I think the thing to do is to be original and come at things from a different angle, because there's no real set route for doing anything. No rules about how you become a writer or an actor or anything. You can train, or you can do whatever way into it. But loads of people do. Loads of people have like careers, completely different careers for 15 years, and then start being an actor, and they're brilliant. There's people like Jed Mercurio, who worked in medicine, and now he's a huge, one of the big figures in TV. And that's, so I think it's kind of finding that little spark, isn't it? The little thing within you that works, that a little bit of originality that you've got that other people don't necessarily have. And then you've got a niche, and then you can use that and power it forward. Because there's loads of people doing the same stuff, or the same sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And they're all, everyone's good, and then you need an extra. You need just a little turbocharge to give you something. It's funny. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to, you know. I don't know how. To a degree, it's a mystery. So I don't know. Just.
Well, like you said, the some of the projects you probably thought would be successful never saw the light and day, and then you've got other projects that have done well that you probably didn't think. So it must be really. I don't know how you do it. I honestly don't. I don't know how you can sit there and put all this work into something and it just never gets seen. It must be soul destroying. But then you take the wins when they come, I suppose.
And you do. You know, a lot of the time you're getting a bit of money, so you know it is a lot of this thing. This career is a job as well. So it's taking. And that you've got to find a way of earning money that is compatible with the career, because it's not you've got to have lots of different sources of money. So part of that is just getting down and doing stuff for money a lot of the time, which is find good stuff through that. Don't do it.
That's the best advice. Just go and get a proper job.
Don't do it. Get a proper job.
Yeah, that's the best advice. And my final question today, what I do on the Mark and Me podcast to make it try and stand out from the others is I let the guest who's on the podcast choose the outro song. And it can be any song in the entire world. But what I do is I only allow it to be chosen on the spot, because if I gave you too long, you'd probably drop me an email in a couple of days saying, I've got it down to 10, now I've got it down to 5. But it can be any song in the entire world by any band. And I know you love your music, but what would you love to be the outro song after all this is edited? It's up there, it's released to the world, ready to listen to. But what's the song that you want to be the closing track for today's interview between you and I?
Can I have a movie soundtrack?
You can have any song from any soundtrack, any movie score, whatever you want.
I'd like the Waking Fright. I don't even know what the track is called. In fact, you can choose almost any of it from that. It's a very weird. I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, Waking Fright. Some of that. Find that.
Yeah.
And show it to me, and I'll tell you if it's right.
If there's one certain track, I'll have a look on YouTube and see which ones are on there, and then you can let me know on email which one when I found a few. Yeah,
sort of very weird, haunting track that appears, and you kind of gets into you a bit. Anyway,
I like the different stuff. You know, some people come on and go, "Oh, a Beatles song." It's like, "Oh, okay." Led Zeppelin, you're like, okay, and it's like that's good, but I like the stuff that's a bit fucking weird. That everyone's like, "What the hell is that?"
So yeah, that would be amazing. Play out music.
Awesome. And just to say, we're both going to be taking part in the Midlands Movie Awards, which are coming up in only a couple of months' time. And I believe we're both judging people's work, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, what a weird thing to decide who is good and who isn't, isn't it? Isn't it strange? But it'd be great to see all the films. I reckon there's going to be some good stuff there.
Yeah, it's good to see the little poster the other day, and it felt like I kind of made it in a weird way. I was like, look, there I am in black and white with some people that are quite well known.
You are well known.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the movie awards. I can't wait to see what random and crazy films we get to view, and hopefully we'll be able to share a beer and talk about the winners in only a few months' time. Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be brilliant. And yeah, I'm looking forward to being surprised by whatever people come up with. I'm sure there's always some really interesting and strange stuff at these kind of festivals. And new talent. Awesome, Steve. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I'm a massive fan of your work, and I can't wait to see where you go and what you're writing next. You kind of teased me a bit today, and I hope that when it is announced, or you can talk about it more, you can come back on and we can delve deep into that. Love to. Yeah, I'll reveal all, just not yet. But it's something that's based in the Midlands. That's pretty good. Yeah. To be fair, most of my stuff. No, that's the only exclusive I'm going to give out on social media. Is Steve talks about his brand new film set in the Midlands. It's gonna be. What a scoop! Yeah, well, it's been brilliant talking to you, Mark. And thank you so much, Steve, for coming on. It means the absolute world to me, and I'm sure we will be speaking very soon about a number of films in great detail. Yeah, great. All right. So there it is. There's my interview with me and Steve Oram. What an amazing guy. And do you know what? It's been a long time that I can remember where I've done a podcast and I spent most of it laughing. But Steve is just so funny from start to finish. And I want to say a massive thank you for him to taking the time to come on the podcast. If you're still taking the time to debate to watch Sightseers after that interview, I genuinely don't know what more I can do. It's so good. It's so funny. And please, if you've gone and checked it out from this podcast, let me know on social media, because that's what I love seeing. Jump onto markandme.com, because on there there's links to my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram, or drop me an email. I love seeing people discover a new album, a new film, a new TV series because of this podcast. It's one of the best compliments that I can get. If you've really enjoyed today's episode, and I say it on each and every episode, please share it. Jump onto your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, and just hit that retweet or share button. Putting it on your stories on Instagram is huge. Many new people can see it and then jump on board and start listening to the podcast. It's a key factor in making this podcast successful and costs you absolutely nothing. I also do have a Patreon page set up. Each and every month I have amazing prizes from Last Exit to Nowhere t-shirts, Richer Sounds and Vice Press. Each and every month they give me exclusive prizes that are just for you guys at home to say thank you for supporting the podcast. You will now be getting an additional extra episode every single month that is exclusive to Patreon. But not only that, some amazing prizes and some exclusive badges and merchandise. It's my way of saying thanks, and I need all the support I can get, because all the money that goes into the podcast via Patreon pays for me to travel the country and conduct more and more interviews. I don't know if many people know this, but I'm a one-man team. I don't have anyone working for me, it's purely just me. I'll be back in only a few days' time. Things are getting absolutely manic. I want to say a massive thank you again for Steve for coming on the podcast. Also check out the Midlands Movies page on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, because you heard us talk about the awards, and I'll be back with a brand new episode very soon. So until then, look after yourself, take care, go and watch Sightseers, and I'll speak to you all soon.